From KUOW 94.9 Seattle, I'm Ross Reynolds. Governor Gregoire's signing ceremony yesterday for same-sex marriage came out of a long history. We're going to learn about that history. We're going to talk to an opponent who's organizing to overturn same-sex marriage. Well, one man dedicated to making sure that Washington won't be the first state to approve same-sex marriage at the polls is Christopher Plante. He's regional director of the National Organization for Marriage. He's worked on both campaigns to overturn same-sex marriage in California and Maine. He's currently working on a referendum to get it on the ballot here in Washington State. The Secretary of State just gave it a number today, R74. Christopher, thanks for your time.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
So are people gathering signatures today?
No, they won't be gathering signatures for probably 3 to 4 weeks. The Secretary of State has a process, as you're aware, to verify the referendum, verify the language. We expect some sort of a challenge on the title and the summary. But after 3 to 4 weeks, we'll be able to get petitions out to the people and begin collecting signatures.
You've expressed confidence that you'll get enough signatures to get this on the ballot, but I seem to recall that a few years ago there was a court case that to prevent the releasing the names of people who signed a referendum against the so-called Everything But Marriage Act. The argument was that if a website published your name as being against this gay right, you'd be subject to problems. That ended up losing. Is the fact that people who sign your initiative might have their names and addresses published on websites going to discourage people from signing?
I imagine that there would be some sort of hampering or chilling effect, and that's one of the problems with disclosing signatories. But we're still confident that we will be able to get far more than enough signatures on this. We're talking about the most fundamental institution our society has, and people in Washington, like people across the country, contrary to what your previous guest said, really do understand that the definition of marriage is man and a woman, one man and one woman. When you talk about rights and privileges, that's a different story, but that's not what this campaign will be about. It will be about the definition of marriage.
In California and Maine, a couple states you worked in, one of the common messages was that to pass these measures was that the teachers were going to be teaching students about same-sex relationships in school. Here's one of the ads from the California campaign.
I can't teach this.
Don't be irrational, Terry. That new health curriculum represents millions of dollars of taxpayer money.
No matter how you spin it, Joan, children don't come from a same-sex relationship.
But we're going to have to teach that marriage is not just about having children.
Fine. Look, love whatever you want, whomever you want. Just don't call it marriage and confuse a kid with a social dynamic that they can't possibly understand.
Christopher Plante, Regional Director of the National Organization for Marriage. Do you expect that we'll be hearing similar ads here in Washington State?
I would expect that we would. The cause, or I shouldn't say the cause, the consequences of redefining marriage, particularly for our children, not just this generation, but the generations to come, is something that Washington voters need to truly understand. We saw it in Massachusetts. As soon as same-sex marriage was legalized there, students as young as kindergarten were taking books home on same-sex relationships. Second graders were required to read books such as The King and King, and the First Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that parents had no right to opt their children out of such things. That is a profound impact not only on the children in the education system, but on the rights of parents.
But school curricula are determined by local school districts. So why would a statewide measure on gay marriage affect what was taught in every individual school in which the individual districts are deciding?
Well, once the state goes forward and ratifies some sort of social policy, in this sense, if they were to continue to ratify that marriage was a civil contract between any two people, they would have a duty then to enforce that across and teach that across the spectrum, and that will include the education system. So while Washington may have local control of curricula, you have it on the books that marriage potentially could be anything goes, and the schools will have to teach that because they already do have family programs, and it will be wrong for them, it will be against the law for them to teach something different than what the social policy is.
Will you start your media campaign to try to get same-sex marriage overturned while you're still gathering signatures, or will that wait until you get the necessary signatures?
That's still to be decided. We just filed the referendum yesterday. The governor just signed the law yesterday. We're working out the details of that. We certainly are going to focus first and foremost on making sure that the referendum is approved by the Secretary of State, and then the requisite signatures are gathered in a very timely manner. I could imagine that there will be some discussion of that. Certainly this is a topic in the media. You and I are on the phone. It's in the newspaper, and so there could be some action on that front.
I'm a little curious about the mechanics of this, Chris Plante. Certainly there are areas of the state that will sign this petition that will vote against same-sex marriage. There are other areas of the state that will almost certainly vote in favor of same-sex marriage. Where are the kind of districts that are going to make the difference here?
Well, as you saw in R71, there's no doubt about it that if you look at the I-5-405 corridor and those counties that voted against referendum 71, there'll be a lot of work to do there. But you have to remember that the question is fundamentally different here. The question voters are going to be asked in November is whether or not marriage should be defined as something other than one man and one woman. This conversation won't be about rights. It won't be about privileges. Gays and lesbians have the right to live as they choose, but they don't have the right to redefine marriage for the rest of us.
We'll see how this plays out. Christopher Plante, thanks for your time.
You're very welcome.
He's Regional Director of the National Organization for Marriage.